give it over to Christine and Tegan. They're going to tell us all about Outschool. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We'll do quick introductions, and then I'm going to let my colleague Tegan run the show. Although I heard some interest in hearing a little bit more at the end about how Outschool works with students more broadly. So we can also do a little bit of that as well. I am the business development lead. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts, but I own all of Outschool's efforts to find institutional funding for schools, for students to use Outschool. And so a big part of that is working with ESA programs, and especially working in Arizona. So I have been working closely with the Educational Service Alliance, and we're excited to partner and collaborate. And one of the ways that we wanted to do so was to share a bit more with the amazing educator entrepreneurs about Outschool. And so I'm going to pass it over to Tegan to share a quick intro.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. I'm Tegan Bumbard. I am our professional learning specialist here at Outschool, and I'm based in Orlando, Florida. I, much like Christine, am a one-woman show leading up all of our professional learning function at Outschool. So everything from the moment you start to become interested, much like we're doing today, to help give educators that overview of what Outschool is for their context, all the way through the onboarding process and then beyond. So I work with educators at virtually all of the touch points throughout their Outschool journey. So it's really exciting to be here today and to share with you some of my passion about Outschool and what we do. So here we are. There are 4 big things that we're going to cover today. We are going to have time for Q&A. So if you are like me and you have your Post-its handy and you want to parking lot some questions for the end, please feel free to do so. And we're going to have that time to go over those and answer your questions. We'll do a quick overview of what Outschool even is. I heard from a few of you that you had not heard of Outschool. You're not really sure what we are all about. So we'll go over that information and help you to see the reach that we have for your business and your learners and the supports that we provide. We'll talk about Outschool just for individual educators. For those of you, I know I heard Tom, you mentioned even if it was just for yourself as a side gig, we'll look at how does Outschool work for solo educators. We'll also take a look at how Outschool works for organizations, because it can be pretty different for both of those different demographics. And also we like to really help educators to see what happens after the approval process. So after educators have gone through and organizations have gone through the application process and the onboarding, what comes next? Because that can be a really important part for us to consider and know what to expect, what's going to happen in the long term. So let's go ahead and first talk just what on earth is Outschool. And the long and short of what we are is a global marketplace. So if you are familiar with probably a number of other marketplace ventures, Airbnb is a marketplace. Etsy is a marketplace. We've got Teachers Pay Teachers, right? In that education space, those are all different marketplaces. Outschool is very similar. We are the platform, and the educators and the organizations are independent business owners that utilize that platform to host their classes and to really run their business in our online setting. And so we're that global marketplace. We have, like I've said, we've got about 5,000 or so solo educators and organizations that teach a wide variety. Pretty much everything is covered on Outschool, and it's pretty exciting to have such a wide range of ages and opportunities for kids. So just a couple bullets that you can see up on the screen of really what we have. So we do have just about 1 million learners. So kind of take that, that's a really big number. And we are always growing. Those learners are coming from just under 200 countries. I believe at my last check, it was around 196 was the number of countries that we've reached. So we really do have a touch point in every country almost in the world. The other thing that's really exciting about Outschool is our educators come in with a wide variety of expertise, a wide range of educational experiences and lived experiences. And so they're able to come and teach content, teach topics that excite them. I was just able to speak with an educator yesterday, actually, who teaches collaborative thinking and creative writing through Zelda. So if you are a video game fan, it was so exciting that she's able to utilize that love of video games and connect it with learners and their love of video games to really hone in on the academics of learning, and meet them where they're at. So you're able to really just teach content, teach those topics that are going to not only excite you, but also those learners to bring them into the learning. Scheduling classes is something also that's important to take note of. On Outschool, we do not create your schedule because you are your own boss. So you create the classes, you create the schedule when you would like to teach. You price those classes at a price that you would like to price them at. We do have pricing recommendations. I run a business coaching cohort every month on Outschool where we talk about how you can price price your classes, because there is some strategy that we want to implement. Being a global platform, we want to make sure that we're being really strategic with that pricing. We also take care of a lot of the little details. So if you are thinking about video conferencing costs, right now, obviously we are using Teams. On Outschool, we do use Zoom. We take care of that cost if you have an account through us. You don't log in to Zoom like you would if it was a personal account, because we have all of that embedded right within our platform. So everything happens right in our Outschool platform. The other things that you don't have to worry about are payment systems. We take care of the payments. That's part of the platform and what we do. We have communication systems, so you don't need to worry about those. You don't need to send reminders. We take care of all of those small, more minute details so that you can focus on building your classes, facilitating fantastic experiences, and building your business. So it's a brief overview of all of the things that we do, which honestly is a lot, right? So when we're talking about Outschool for our independent educators, that would be me back in the day. About 6 years ago, just in a couple weeks, it was 6 years ago that I started teaching at Outschool as a solo educator. And this is a really great opportunity for so many different people from different walks of life. Whether it is, Tom, like you mentioned, that side hustle for traditional brick and mortar teachers that want to teach online, homeschool moms, other business owners. We have a lot of different people, like I said, from different walks of life who are coming to Outschool to teach online. Something that we are really proud of and excited about are that the educators on Outschool are just very in tune to providing the most impactful learning experiences. We really do encourage educators to provide those high impact experiences. And we have created, and you can see up on the screen on the left-hand side, there's those 3 words. We have created something called the ACE framework that we encourage educators to really build their classes in alignment with. We encourage them to learn more about best practices there, to facilitate agency, to build community in their classes, and to not only lead your own expertise and grow, but also to encourage kids, even the youngest ones, to recognize what their expertise is and how they can grow that knowledge. And so a little about the application process over on the right. It's pretty simple, as you can see. There are 4 steps. The first, of course, is to create an account. Outschool.com/teach is where you'd want to go for that. You'll be presented with an application. The application will ask a little bit about your experience. It will ask about any educational experiences as well, your experience working with children. The best practice there is to really fill in that with as much detail as you can. So I always say it's to err on the side of caution and give extra information, or even if you're not sure it's going to count or be important, go ahead and put that in there, because you just never know. And I think it's just the other part with that is to don't discredit your hobbies. All right, like I mentioned that teacher yesterday, Zelda, video games. For most people, they might see that as a hobby, but because you have an expertise in that, or because if you're really into Minecraft or you're very much into podcasting, even if that's not the area that you want to teach, by showcasing that you have that secondary hobby, that skill set, it's going to really lean into how and what you can teach on Outschool as well. And so we want to showcase that to our approvals team. You'll notice when you complete the application, there's also a video portion. It is very short. Don't overthink it. I know sometimes we tend to overthink things. It's a short 4 to 5 minute video, and it's just a quick demo. I always like to say, if you remember Blue's Clues, and Steve would always talk. I'm from the Steve generation. And so Steve would always talk, right, to the camera, and he was having a conversation with the kids that were watching. And that's like a Blue's Cluesing of a class. And so that's really what you want to do in that demo. Not necessarily say, hi, I'm Tegan, this is what I teach, but more of an interactive, and showing, not telling, but showing how you'll teach. Once that application goes through, you submit it, and sometimes it can take a few days, but we have a team of folks that review each application, and then you'll receive notice if it was approved. If that was approved, you'll be prompted to complete a background check and identity verification. Something important to note about both of those is that they are at Outschool's cost. We take care of paying for both the background check and the identity verification. So you'll want to make sure you go through the process that you're prompted to within the Outschool platform so that that is taken care of. And last but not least, of course, is my whole role is there's going to be plenty of professional learning for you once you get started. We have not only asynchronous onboarding materials that will help you to get started, but we also have live sessions. So once you're approved, join my friends over and learn the ropes, learn how to make your debut and get down to business. Those are our 3 Kickstart orientation live programs that you can participate in to really learn how to set your best foot forward. That's that one. We'll go ahead, and for those of you that are thinking about becoming an organization, it's a little different, okay? So just to kind of highlight, since we just talked about the application process, we'll stick with that, and you'll see that over on the left-hand side there. Very similar. The URL is slightly different. So it's going to be outschool.com/organization. Application is also going to be very, very similar. The big difference here for an organization is you want to make sure that you're not only sharing what your expertise is, but you want to share more details about the organization that you run, your impact on your local community if you are already in business, global community if you are online also, is, in addition. You want to have some information on the growth of the business. It's a little bit different than an individual educator, because typically the assumption within an organization is that they do already have some sort of brick and mortar or physical or even online location already set up to some extent. If you don't have all of those set up, it's okay too, but it is something that we do find fairly common. So if you have that already, be sure to include that. The other thing that's different in that portion of the application is we want to share your teachers. So you might be the administrator of the organization, but you're going to have teachers that work under you. Those are the teachers that are going to be facilitating classes. And so we also want to include details about them. What are their areas of expertise? What are their strengths, their hobbies, things like that? That, again, just like with a solo teacher, those are going to help you to really narrow down and brainstorm how your classes will run and what they will utilize to convey that information and the lessons. Similar, again, upon approval, that background check and identity verification takes place. Once you're approved as an organization, teachers will follow the same thing. You can add teachers. They do not have to apply because they are your employees or your contractors, depending on how your business is set up. And so you'll just be able to add them very, very simply. It takes a matter of minutes. I would say probably under 2 to set up a new teacher under your organization. Once they're on, they will just need to watch a couple onboarding videos that we have. They'll get the background check and the ID verification as well. Again, those are all at Outschool's cost. That's not something that you need to worry about covering as part of your business expenses. And same thing for you all. Organizations also can take part and participate in those free professional learning opportunities. So those are a great opportunity to again, kickstart your business. And then over on the right, I just wanted to highlight for you all, as an organization, what are the perks? Why is it so great to bring your business online to Outschool? And the first right there is just being able to have access to our global platform. You remember earlier, I've already said we have nearly 200 countries that we are reaching learners in daily. So that is incredible. That's an incredible reach for you to be able to have. You can have virtually unlimited teachers. At least I have not found the limit yet. We have some organizations with only 2 or 3, and that's wonderful. We have some organizations with over 100 teachers. And so it's really up to you and your business structure how many teachers you have. You have the ability there to facilitate classes 24 hours a day if you want. We do have quite the population of learners in places like Japan. We have a good population of learners in South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and in places that for me here in Orlando would not be a great time zone to teach in. But you might have teachers that are wanting to teach things late at night if they are in US time zones. Maybe they're wanting to travel a little bit and teach while they're traveling. They're able to do so. The last 2 things there are really important for your business, and they are that you will have access to some pretty incredible insights into your business. You are able to see who's viewing your classes, what those conversion rates are looking like. You're able to do some analysis into your retention, really digging into that data, participating, like I mentioned earlier, in business coaching cohorts where we get even more data because I'm a huge data fan and I like to make sure that we're looking at data. And then that last perk is because we do at Outschool have a very strong partnerships, thanks to Christine, with ClassWallet. And so classes that are on Outschool go through a pretty automatic approval with ClassWallet. It's much easier to be approved and to receive those funds and reimbursements and all of the things that go with ClassWallet because we already have that connection. We have a very strong relationship with them. And then the last thing that we want to talk about, and there we go, is after approval. What happens? So free support, our support team is there also 24 hours a day on the front line to make sure that any questions are answered. We have a trust and safety team to hold up our safety and privacy standards, making sure not only that the learners are safe, but you as well. So educators on Outschool have access to that trust and safety to make sure that they are staying safe and protected just as much as the learners are. We do have a class approval process. Support.outschool.com is our help center, and on there you'll be able to find things like our class content policy and standards for class listings. So that's a really great resource that I would highly encourage you to check out. We do uphold fairly high standards for classes on Outschool. We want to make sure that they are the best of the best. And so with those class content policies, it will ensure things like classes aren't taught with bias. They're embracing multiple perspectives, that we're really looking at things from a diverse and wide lens. Marketing needs and customer service. We talked about customer service already, but we do advertise on Outschool. After approval, you still have to market yourself too. I like to say Outschool is not a plug and play business. And I don't think any business is really a plug and play type of business if we really think about it. The marketing on Outschool comes from your class listings. If you can think back to your days as an undergrad and you would look through the course catalog picking your classes, and you might get a sentence or two describing that class. And then you would get into the class and be like, this was not what I expected. It's much harder than I anticipated or much too easy. We don't want families to have that experience. So our classes are very thorough, very detailed listings so that families know exactly what to expect when they enroll. It helps them to have a better experience. It helps their learners to have a better experience. And it helps you as an educator to build a stronger business. Because when happy customers know what to expect, happy customers stay. And they stay and they build that retention with you and they build a strong foundation. So you'll still need to market through predominantly the Outschool platform, although you are obviously welcome and encouraged to market outside of the platform as well. I always tell educators, focus on the platform first and on your class listings and profile. When you're marketing outside of the platform, whether that's in your local community with grassroots marketing, you're going onto social media, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, etc. those are areas that you want to focus on building brand awareness and not necessarily focusing on conversions. Um, Brand awareness is incredibly huge to make sure that people know who you are, know that you're on Outschool, can really build trust in your brand. And the last thing there that I've noted for after you have been approved, we have an incredibly supportive and engaged community. Most of our community currently lives on Facebook in a variety of different groups that are aligned with the teaching at Outschool or their subject areas or age groups that they teach. We still have an educator library at teach.outschool.com that you're welcome to check out, where you can see on the events calendar all of the live events that we have going on. You can see all of the different blog posts and things that are happening within our community as well. So there's so many things always happening that after you've been approved on Outschool, it really is a strong sense of community if you wish to participate in that. So, and that's, hopefully we've gone over everything there. Christine, I'd love to see, if there are any questions that you all have about that process for joining Outschool, any questions that maybe just about Outschool in general that you had, or the after approval phase of what to expect.
If you guys just want to either raise your hand, put it in the chat, or just I think raising your hand or putting the question in the chat is probably the best option, and then we can unmute you when it's your turn. So, all right, ask away. All right, we do have a question in the chat. Tom is asking, are all courses taught online or can have in-person learning too?
It's a great question. So Outschool is 100% online. So all of our classes are hosted through the platform through Zoom. That being said, I know, Tom, you mentioned that you have an organization, a brick and mortar physical location already. And so that is something that some organizations have. Diversification is important, right? Especially as you have a business, to diversify that portfolio. You are 100% able to still have, and many of our organizations do still have, a physical location in their wherever they live, wherever their business is based. And some have multiple if they're a little bit more widespread. And then they have that secondary component to their business on Outschool in the online format. And I think particularly there's one organization from a small town in New York, it's a children's museum. They are in that very small location. They don't have a huge reach in their neighborhood other than the folks in their community and the surrounding communities. They brought their classes to Outschool and they're now able to reach a much larger audience because of that. And so it's really about diversifying from your physical location and expanding that reach to grow your business.
So I have a question. I'm going to ask the question probably everyone else is not asking or brave enough to ask. So obviously you do all the advertising, you have the platform, you have, you pay for the background check, all those things. So what is the payout rate? Because I know some agencies it's 20% for the company and 80% for the business, or it's 40 or whatever. What's your guys' payout rate?
It's a great question. We do a 70-30 split.
70-30 split. Perfect.
So, yep. So educators and organizations on Outschool retain 70%. The 30% is retained by Outschool, and that does cover, like you mentioned, it covers all of our engineers that are always working so hard to make new products and features for you all. It's a busy summer at Outschool right now. There's so many things coming down the pipeline. It includes the cost of the advertising and the marketing, like you mentioned, but there's also our 24-hour support team that we want to keep that in mind. There's the professional learning that comes in for you, for educators, that is included. Those communities are included. There's so many features that we have and kind of perks and bonuses that are included for that 30%.
Awesome. Thank you.
So this is Chris. I have a question. So can we kind of walk through an example of, excuse me, how that works? Like I've got a class that's on video. Is it something like 30 people across the world are signed into that class and they're paying, I don't know, $10 a person or something like that and then I would get 70% of that, or can you walk through an example of how that works?
Yeah, no, that's so The first thing that we want to recognize is you can decide if you want to have one learner in that class or you want to have up to 18 learners. We don't have it go above 18. Educationally, I'm going to bring my teacher talk in. Educational best practice is to not have those larger class sizes. And in fact, what we actually noticed for some data, because I told you I'm a data nerd, once we get above 6 to 8 learners, you're actually going to start to notice that the quality of the class or the impact of the class does start to decline. And so we recommend that 8 to 12 learners for a single class. With that being said, you can go up to 18, and there are some educators that do. It requires a very strong command of classroom management because you still want to make sure we're having fun. We still want to make sure that those kids are engaged and participating. So you can have that, again, the recommended 8 to 12 area of kids that are there. And yes, every single learner that is enrolled will pay an enrollment fee. And so for simple math, we'll say it is $10. Our recommendation is $18 to $21 per hour. Again, we don't want to just throw a dart at the dartboard to pick a price. We want to be really strategic with our pricing, do some market research to see what a good price for our particular classes are. But let's go ahead and use 10 for that easy number sake. You charge $10. Let's say we have 10 kids enrolled. That is a $100 class, right? That is the earnings there would be $100. The teacher would retain $70, $30 would be retained by Outschool. And that payment is paid out via PayPal. So the payment and how you would receive that would depend on the class type. So sometimes it is a week after the class begins. Sometimes it is 2 Sundays after the class has begun or the meeting has occurred. The frequency and when that actual payment happens does have a little bit depending on which kind of class, because we do have a variety of formats. And so if you are doing something like a one-time class or a class that meets 4 weeks once a week, that would be paid out the week after the first meeting has occurred. If you are doing an ongoing class, so a book club that you have every Wednesday at 3 p.m., that will be paid out 2 Sundays after a meeting has occurred. And so you will essentially be earning a payment every Sunday, starting 2 Sundays after the first class. So there's a little bit of nuance there. If you go to that website that I mentioned, and if we want to drop that into the chat, I'll drop that there in just a second. Support.outschool.com. There's a search feature on there for pricing. You just type in the word pricing or payments, and you will be able to get much more detailed information about how that pricing structure and the payment structure works for all of the different class formats.
That's really great, though. It's 1 to 2 weeks paying out. That's awesome. I do have another question. As I mentioned, I used another platform for tutoring before, not for classes like this. And they had like an algorithm for how tutors were found and searched. Do you guys have an algorithm, meaning like if you responded quickly and you were had high ratings, you were pushed back up to like the searches when parents search for you and stuff? I don't think that's the situation for Outschool. I think everyone has equal access to having their classes listed and viewed, correct?
Everyone does have fairly equal access to that, yes. With that being said, we do have a fairly dynamic search tool.
Okay.
And so we want to take that into consideration. So I like to say that search tool is smarter than I am. And so if a family has a history of taking classes with a certain educator, and let's say, I'm going to use my own kiddos. I always use my own kids as an example. My kid loves Dungeons and Dragons. And so they're always in this class. If that teacher from their Dungeons and Dragons class starts offering a one-on-one tutoring, she's going to show up higher in my personal search results, but she might not show up as high in your personal search results, because that search really does pay attention to what I'm searching for. So it can be influenced by the parent and by the user and what they have searched for in the past. It also can be influenced by an educator's popularity. The number of enrollments, or a fill rate, like I like to use is kind of the terminology there. There's a variety of influences on that search algorithm, but everybody at the end of the day, yes, there's equal-ish opportunity, but it's going to really depend on the user searching, because their search history will have a strong bit of influence there.
Perfect. That's a great question. Tom has another wonderful question. For individual educators, not organizations, are they 1099s or W-2? So basically, are they contractors or are they employees?
So you are not an employee. You receive a 1099 from PayPal. So Outschool does not provide the 1099. PayPal does, and you have to remember that it's once you've hit 20,000 in sales, right, and that you have been paid out by PayPal over the course of a year, that's when that particular document is triggered by PayPal. If you have earned under that, you will not receive a 1099. At that point, you become responsible for keeping track of your funds, which I will be super honest. If you are, you should always be keeping track of your funds. As just a good business move, always keeping track of your own financials and not relying upon PayPal, Outschool, or anybody else is always the best practice.
Tom also had another question, Tegan, about I have a coding teacher who uses purchase software. Is there any way to deliver software to students, or are we limited to freeware/web applications?
So you would not be able to deliver software. However, what you can do is have that as one of the materials. So, and again, you could do that. That would be one of the materials in the class, and kids would have to purchase it, and families would have to purchase it to enroll in that class. It might be something that they already have. You do want to make sure that you're considering the expense of that for families, because once we do that, you do lower the maybe the demand for that particular class, because it might be again, keeping our math simple, that $10 for that class, but if the software costs an additional $30, it's actually a $40 class, right, for that particular family. And so, not to say that we don't want to do that, because I think there's a lot of justification as to why we would do that, but now in that class listing, we're not trying to sell a $10 class. We now have to sell a $40 class, because we need to convince those families and help them to see the value in that, and really kind of the value prop that the educator has, their expertise, their experience, and making sure that we're clearly communicating that. So can use it. The big things that you want to use when you're looking at classes to create on Outschool, and even if you are using freeware, you are using tools online, we do have some pretty strict communications regarding tools, because our number one priority is kids' safety. So if that software, that freeware, the tools that we're using are not COPPA compliant, they will not be able to be used by kids under the age of 13. Doesn't mean we can't screen share them, but the moment we ask a kiddo to click something, we need to make sure that that particular tool is COPPA compliant, because if they're under the age of 13. And again, safety is just our number one priority, as I'm sure it is for all of you as well. So important.
Yeah, I love that you require the background check. That is absolutely amazing. I know some organizations it's optional, but that is wonderful that you guys are requiring it. And I'm not up on the tax rules, but Tom, I do know that you mentioned, well, you guys were Tegan, you mentioned too that it's $20,000. I believe they push it back a year, but all the electronic payments, the new ruling was $600. So for like, Zelle, Venmo, PayPal, all those electronic. So it will change, I believe, starting next year. It was supposed to be this year, but I believe they changed it, pushed it back. But the new tax rule, I believe, will be $600 for any processing payment like PayPal for a tax document to be released. So just to clarify that, Tom, you might want to just check in. And that's in any of your guys's Zelle, Venmo, if you're taking anything. So you really want to be careful with that. PayPal makes sense, because if that's your business, I mean, you kind of expect for a tax document to be released. But, and then also just to clarify, anytime, Tom, too, you're in control of your schedule, like with Outschool, you're a 1099 contractor. Employees is when somebody tells you exactly when to be there, when to show up. So just to clarify the difference between the two, because it can be confusing, but the main criteria is if you control the schedule or not. So if you control it, 1099. That's usually the best way to know that. All right, Stephanie has a really good question. Do you currently have speech therapists on your platform? If so, are they providing direct services, accent modifications, or ESL education?
It's a fantastic question. So therapy of any kind is not something that we do allow on Outschool. because it's considered a medical service, and that would be a huge liability for us, a huge liability for you, and we don't want to have anybody put in that position. So therapy in any form, whether it's mental health therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, those are types of classes or services that would not be permitted on Outschool. However, you can do ESL. We do have quite the demand for ESL at in a variety of ways, specifically, which if you're a US-based teacher, you've probably had, or US-based education, you might have had a lot of English as a second language for Spanish speaking. The demand on Outschool, because we have such a high population in South Korea and Japan and some of our Asian nations, is for more Asian language ESL, which can be a bit different, especially we think about cognates, we think about the way that we teach to a Spanish language learner to teach them English, it would be a little bit different. So there's absolutely room for that. I think of accent modification is if you are have drama in your background, that's actually really popular classes, our drama classes, and how we can change our voices and use accents. So there's a lot of ways that we can still teach some of those same skills that a speech therapist would have, but we do them in ways that are not therapy, right? They're going to be ingrained within other content areas. They're going to be really learner-led and learner-centered in things like drama and the ESL classes.
No, I thought I did see a lot of social, like, not therapies, I think they call them like social clubs, social groups on Outschool. As long as it's not called therapy, that's allowed, right? Like a social group.
Correct. Yep. And then Chris has a question, the price range for classes and what makes a class more valuable. And I will say, I think that really is going to depend on the family, right? What's valuable to me as a parent might be not valuable to another parent and vice versa. So the biggest things that we want to think about when we're articulating those classes, we are showcasing our expertise. We're showcasing, and that expertise can be lived experience. It can be your educational experience. I think one of the important things is sometimes we get hung up on certifications or college and university degrees. And on Outschool, those are important, yes, but they're not the end all. I have college degrees. I could not teach you how to sew. I can't teach you how to change the oil in a car. I can't teach you how to cook. Like, there are a lot of things that I can't get and teach you from my degrees. And so those are all things that we actually do have classes for in Outschool, which is why I call those all out. So you don't necessarily have to have a degree, but you do want to share your expertise. You want to share your impact. You want, in those class listings, clearly communicating what is that class experience going to be like? How are learners going to have that agency that I mentioned earlier in that class? Because families and parents especially want to feel comfortable. They want to feel like this is a good value spend of my money. I am really confident that my learner is going to walk out of here. They're going to have learned, they're going to have enjoyed themselves, and they're going to be excited to keep going, right? Excited. And if you're a parent, you probably can understand where I'm coming from with that sentiment, is we want them to walk out of class and be excited for the next one. So it's going to really change on what that value is. It really is going to depend upon the family and what they're looking for.
Now, you kind of mentioned before about some of the different class, how they're set up, because I think I've seen some classes where they're a class for the whole semester, some classes are 6 weeks, and you mentioned that some classes meet every week. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that and like what the freedom is for that time length of a class?
Yeah. So we have classes that when educators first start, we encourage them to create what's called a one-time class. And it is exactly as it sounds. It is a class that meets once with one group of learners. For an example, it might be a class about a frog life cycle. That is just one lesson. It meets for 45 minutes. Those kids come in, you have that one group of learners for 45 minutes. You learn all about the frog life cycle, and that is it. After that class is over, you do not have that group of learners ever again, right? You might in another class, but in that particular setting for that class, that was it. That class, from the payout perspective, you would receive the payout exactly 1 week after that class has occurred. with the exception of if it was late at night, you'll get it the next morning. So, little caveat there. The next type of class that we have that's very popular is called an ongoing class. And that is a class that is very club-like in that it'll be the same day or maybe the same 2 days. I know my oldest was in an ongoing class that was Mondays and Thursdays. So it's 1 day or maybe 2 days a week, sometimes more for some classes, and it meets every single week. But I have the ability as a parent to stop that subscription. So maybe we're going on vacation and I don't want to pay for the class while my kid is not there because we're going on vacation. We can stop or even pause our subscription and then start it back up when we return. The purpose of an ongoing class is to allow kids to drop in without feeling as though they missed anything from previous meetings and that they can hop out without there being any repercussion on their learning. So ongoing classes are kind of like, if I think back to my own childhood, I was in Girl Scouts, which I'm sure others were in some sort of scouting program at some point. And I might go on Monday night to Girl Scouts and I might miss it for a couple weeks, but then I could show right back up a couple weeks later and I didn't really miss anything. Every meeting stood on its own. And so that's our second most popular format for educators. Then you do, of course, have, like you mentioned, those multi-day classes that are going to meet once or twice or more per week over a set duration of weeks. So you might have a class that meets once a week for 4 weeks or once a week for 6 weeks. They can go up. Usually we don't see classes past about 12, 16 weeks. That gets a little much, especially if we think about pricing, thinking about your own wallet. Because you want to make sure as an educator and a business owner that you're holding a class and making the money that it deserves to be made. But even if like $10 is a low price, so let's say it is $10 though, just for our easy math skills, at 16 weeks, that's $160. Double that because it's probably going to be closer to $20 for an hour. And you can start to see that that's going to be a very expensive class for families. I don't know about you. I don't just go to Target and drop $20 to $200, $300 without really thinking about that purchase. When I go to the store, I'm really thinking about larger purchases like that, looking at reviews and making sure I'm purchasing the right fit. So you can have classes that long, but I always caveat that with the demand for price points that high will not be quite the same as price points that are a little bit lower. Just for budgetary reasons for, us as consumers, I think we can all see where that comes in. But I think, does that answer your question, Tammy? Were there a little more?
No, that was a great conversation.
Okay.
I just really appreciate you guys breaking it down more into some of the details and stuff so that way they can be better prepared and know what to expect as well. Mm-hmm. Super helpful conversation. And that's what I love about Outschool and I recommend everyone to go and search Outschool and see the classes and see what is being created on there and how they're set up, because you're just going to explode with ideas for your topics and subjects that you want to create. But yeah, it can be set up any way, really. There's a lot of different options. I really love that you guys allow teachers to create and do what's best for their schedule and their teaching style.
I'll just add one note, because I know we had a few micro school folks on here. And actually, I'll also say a couple of notes about our work in Arizona with the ESA program. I'll start there. So Tegan mentioned that we are auto approved in Class Wallet. We were fortunate enough to sort of be broadly viewed as a great educational expense. And so families that want to purchase a class from Outschool don't need to wait for any approval time. So they can check out directly in Class Wallet. And that means that they don't have to worry about reimbursements. They don't have to worry about submitting receipts or other documentation. And so I know that as the ESA program has been growing, that there's more and more, there's been some changes, and it can make things more complicated for families to purchase. And so, and I also know that it is more complicated to become a vendor. So we are doing a lot of business in Arizona. So it could be something to consider for those folks who are looking at all of their ways to grow a robust business in Arizona. And then I'll also mention that we do work with schools, and in particular with schools that serve, I think, non-traditional learners, whether they're hybrid, homeschoolers coming into co-ops. And we do have some tools that allow school leaders to purchase classes on behalf of families. So I won't go into detail here today, but I'll leave my email in the chat should anyone be interested in learning about how, as a micro school leader, I think someone mentioned, like, we're focusing on math and English and the core academics. Well, what's great about having an Outschool account on the side is if you need to find a Japanese teacher because your kiddos are really into exploring a different foreign language, you don't have to source or contract someone in your local context. You can kind of think of Outschool as a Swiss Army knife in your or a toolbox in your back pocket. The other thing that I'm working on is, as micro schools expand, we're looking to, alongside the National Microschooling Center, play matchmaker so that, when we can offer a class of about 5 to 10 on our side, we can offer some discounts for micro schools. But it's, you want to make that match. So what we're looking to do is say, if there's a couple micro schools in Arizona that are looking for advanced math, for example, because they've got kiddos who are ready to move on to algebra. We're going to be working with the National Microschooling Center to help do some of that matchmaking, and then work with Outschool educators to provide that class. So again, that's a little preview, but I wanted to mention here, since I heard so many folks talking about pods or micro schools, that I think that we can be a great tool for your families in support of your learner-centered model. And now, Tegan, I know Tom's the king of the questions. He's got a really good one in the chat.
Yeah, great questions.
I love it. I love it. And so the short answer there is so the first question is yes and no. And to the second question, the short answer is there is no expectation from Outschool, but I'm going to speak a little bit more to those. So on Outschool, we have a wide range of families. And something that's really important is, as the educator, as the business owner, you have to make a decision as to what types of families you want to target. And through the words of your class listing, that's how you are going to communicate to those families that you're a good fit for them. So if that is something, if providing letter grades and traditional homework is something that is important to you, you can include that in your class listing. It will be attractive to some families. It will not be attractive to other families because it just won't be. There are, similarly, if you put the word Common Core in a math class, it's going to be attractive to some families, not attractive to other families. And so that's something that you want to take into consideration. Typically, homework is optional. What I typically see is they might have optional homework, but not something that is required. So that's one thing that I typically see. Letter grades, usually by request. I don't know that there's any classes that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's some because we have so many, but I can't think of any that automatically provide a grade, a grading system. It's typically, if the parent requests it, they're able to do so. And teachers are usually fairly accommodating because every place is different in what the requirements are for documentation. In terms of feedback and deliverables that Outschool families expect, feedback is huge, I think, just in general. I think it's less of an expectation, what do they expect, and more of a customer service component of making sure that we are providing really quality feedback. We are communicating thoroughly with families. So I think it's less of an expectation and more of just a customer service best practice to engage with families. One of the things that I always recommend is when something that's important on Outschool is to have reviews. It's social proof to make sure that, so families can see, how is this class? What do other families say about it? But sometimes reviews can be hard to get. I know myself, I get a request for a review from a company that I've recently purchased from, and I will admit 50% of the time, at least, I just delete the email. And so that's a real blocker for reviews. So instead, what we can do is every week, my recommendation for educators is to reach out to at least 3 to 4 to 5 families with some verbiage about their kiddo. Like, what has their kid learned this week? How have they grown? What was something funny that they said? Because we all know kids say the funniest things. What maybe did that parent not see or overhear? What can we share with them about the amazingness of their kid? And at the very end of that, we just ask, hey, if you're interested in leaving me feedback, I would love to receive it. But if that communication is 99% focused on that kiddo and providing feedback about their learning experience and the wonderful things that they did and said and their contributions, that's how we're going to start to really make that family feel welcome and feel encouraged to leave us feedback as well, which is going to help our businesses on Outschool. So I think it's less of an expectation and more of just a great practice for customer service.
Awesome. Well, I have another quick question that popped in my head as we were talking about all the different options and we were talking about micro schools and different curriculums and stuff and classes that could be taught. I'm not sure if this is allowed because of trademarks and copyright and all that, but in class, so I have a science teacher who's going to teach the biology curriculum from Apologia. Are you allowed to put curriculum names in your classes like Apologia class or whatever?
It would have to be a secular curriculum. So that's a big thing on Outschool is we are a secular platform.
Oh, okay.
So the curriculum that you are welcome to use, I know there are some educators that teach with Saxon. There are some educators that teach with a variety of books. I think about EIW and the IEW, right? And we've got a few different other curriculums, especially that are popular in the homeschooling circles. And those can be fine. But most of the copyright with that, right, is that the kiddos would have to have their own copy. So I think about Saxon. I use Saxon with my own kids. Those kids, the learners in your class, would have to have their own copy of the Saxon materials. You can teach the content in accordance with those lessons, but we can't, due to copyright, you would want to be really careful with that as an educator because the copyright does fall onto the burden of copyright falls onto the educators, and it might not necessarily fall into fair use.
So the curriculum has to be secular, and then you would put that in the materials list so that way the family knows that they need to get that material. Because I can see that as a common way for these classes for these teachers that are teaching classes like for a month or for a semester, like maybe helping with credit or whatever. Like they're the teacher for that subject. I can see that they're gonna want probably or prefer to use a curriculum. Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Does anyone else have any other questions? Let's do a last call for questions. You can see someone's typing. Oh, Claire, you're so sweet. Awesome. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, we're going to wrap up. We appreciate everyone attending today. Thank you so much, Tegan and Christine, for